Hi, good evening, and I'd like to welcome you to Poem Praise 2, and I hope that peace has been upon you this day. We're going to move right along and breaking the chains of psychological slavery. Chapter 2, Liberation from Mental Slavery. We are now on the section of Only the Brave Need Apply, and it goes as such. Now, the process of mental liberation is not unlike many other requirements of physical liberation. Freedom from captivity must be taken, not passively requested. It is never willingly given, since the captivity has been in some way beneficial to the captor. So the captor gives up his captive only reluctantly. As our great ancestral saints, Harriet Tubman, Nat Turner, Ida B. Wells, Frederick Douglass, and Medgar Evers, and many others, now nameless, all found the decision to take one's freedom meets with resistance and even mortal danger. To take the captor's trophy could easily result in death to the captive. The lonely and ill-equipped road to freedom is one that will rot with all kinds of danger. It is one thing to sing songs of freedom and to dream dreams of one day having it, but to take the responsibility to claim one's freedom is not for the faint of heart. The nature of the alien consciousness has already created an atmosphere which justifies your captivity both to themselves and to your fellow captives. You are viewed with suspicion of your sanity. To even raise the issue of wanting to be anything other than a well-kept slave. Both your fellow captives and your master cannot possibly conceive why you are not content to partake of his benevolence on his plantation. When you have earned the status of privileged slave economically, educationally, or favor from association with the master, then it becomes even more incredible that you should want any more from this life in this world. The first designation is that you are crazy to think of freeing your mind. You are encouraged to compare yourself with your captive ancestors who suffered such great distress, and so many of your fellow captives who continue to suffer great agony, and this should be sufficient evidence of your blessed status. The fact that you no longer have literal chains on your body is more than sufficient evidence that things are changing, and you are only a greedy and impatient step short of heaven. Once you designated as crazy, then your credibility is seriously compromised. No one who wants to be respected as sane would dare pay any attention to you. What's even worse is that crazy people are not to be trusted to care for themselves, and they must be carefully watched for fear that they may be a danger to themselves or others. Since your insanity has been defined by someone with another consciousness, with another set of objectives, then what constitutes a danger fits into their frame of reference and not into the reference of your free consciousness. Courage is needed to deal with the isolation and vulnerability which results from the designation by your captors. The fact that they control the consciousness of most of your fellow captives means you have very few allies who can offer support and even protection as you seek to free your mind. The process of beginning to think new thoughts in a new consciousness is a lonely process. It has been described as going into the desert by the newly liberated children of Israel in the Old Testament and the Holy Quran. It is described as going into the wilderness, as did Jesus Christ after he was baptized, liberated by John the Baptist. Even of these scriptural images speaks to the sense of isolation which comes from newfound freedom. The loneliness and vulnerability which comes from the removal of your chains and trying out new legs is considerable, as was the wilderness experience for both the Hebrew children and the Christ. There are strong temptations to relapse, constantly confronting the newly free mind in the desert. The reminder of the security and companionship that you knew as a captive is constantly thrown in front of you. The possibilities for fame and fortune, if you will abort your new consciousness and come back into the captive's mindset, is almost a daily consideration. So it is for those who would dare to free their minds from slavery. They see their less competent and infinity, less accomplished fellow captives rewarded extravagantly with fame, fortune, and celebrity status simply by their confirmation that the master's consciousness and his reality is the correct way to think. One can receive grants, tenure, promotions, movie roles, television shows, book contracts, or just the fame of being a prominent display on master's centerpiece, simply by disavowing the consciousness freedom and comfortably staying on the confines of the mental plantation. Now, this is why those who choose to break the chains of mental slavery must be courageous. Only the very brave can resist the temptations or endure the isolation. Since the new consciousness can take a lifetime to begin to show tangible results, it takes a great deal of courage to persist in breaking the chains of the old consciousness and developing a new consciousness. This is another area where the new information and the self-celebration becomes very important. You cannot rely upon the encouragement of the multitudes running to your support and defense. The very nature of the slave mentality ensures that the majority of the slaves will primarily committed to their master and his consciousness. Though your very life is committed to freeing the minds of the captives, you will be perceived by them as an enemy, and they will gladly surrender you to crucifixion, for the nature of the enslaved mind demands it. This requires you to be patient and comfortable, that what you know is correct, and even with so much consciousness or consensus that you are wrong, you must be able to hold on to your right of freedom. This takes great courage. Rebellious slaves have always been dealt with in a very brutal fashion. In the days of the physical plantation, they were beaten, mutilated, or killed. In later times, the same torture was the fate of those who threatened the status assigned to the former slaves. Even today, the possibility of imprisonment, police brutality, mysterious deaths from questionable causes is still the fate of those who challenge the master's consciousness. Of course, there are always the social murders of being unable to make a living, being publicly humiliated, and accused of all kinds of horrendous crimes of reverse racism, anti-Semitism, un-American activity, etc. The bottom line is that those who seek to get free are still dealt with severely And one should not take the decision to break the chains from your mind as a minor consideration. It will take courage. How do we gain such courage? The more we know, the braver we become. The stronger our pride and self-love, the greater our courage. We must maintain association with newly escaped slaves who know the price and the feeling of true mental liberation. There is strength in association. We must seek out colonies of maroons or runaways and gain solace from our association with like-minded souls. We must commune with the spirit of the ancestors who knew and took freedom before us and in anticipation of us. We must stand with the Paul Robertsons, the Marcus Garveys, the Sojourner Truth, Fannie Lou Hamer and Elijah Muhammad, Harriet Tubman and W.E.B. Du Bois spirits who refuse to settle for captivity in any form and whose entire lives were examples of the commitment to breaking the mental chains and going into the desert until they were free. The ultimate weapon against fear is faith, which we will discuss below. Now that does complete this section of Only the Brave Need Apply. And I definitely needed that too. It's sometimes how you're reading some things, how you might be going through the same thing that you're reading. And then all of a sudden you read something that gives you the encouragement and the uplifting of being in the desert. Because yeah, it's real. It's really real. I'm just trying to tell you for real. From a personal standpoint. But it will take courage. So I certainly want you to be encouraged. And as I read the words, encouraging myself too. Because, yeah, that was definitely helpful. And I hope it was helpful for you too. Now our next section in chapter 2, here on Poem Praise 2, is Umoja or unity, or Umoja. The word is spelled U-M-O-J-A, or unity. I'm going to have to break that word down when I talk to you for the next one so we can know what Umoja or unity means. And it's kind of like this or that, you know, that's what I'm thinking, or. So definitely going to break that word down, learn a new word here on Poem Praise 2. So stay tuned, and I will holler at you soon. Regardless, we going to get through this book, and I'll just let you know this is how much we have read already, and this is how much we have to go. Yeah, we doing this. We doing a darn thing. For sure. So, on that, I want you to be blessed and have a wonderful rest of the evening. And I will holler at you soon here on Poem Praise 2. And you know, later, y'all.